Hello and welcome back to the Learn with Kubi podcast. I am your host, Kubi, and this podcast is for content creators and influencers that are trying to understand how to navigate the brand deal, brand partnership dynamic. Today is episode 3 of season 1, and today's guest is Frank Poe. He is the founder of Poe Law PLLC, and he is going to join me today to talk about some really insightful information around creator contracts and how you, as a content creator, can really navigate this process of getting the best protection for yourself before you go into brand deals. I'm going to go ahead and read Frank's bio and then we're going to dive right into this episode. Frank Poe, founder of Poe Law PLLC, is a creator economy attorney representing a variety of brands, creators, artists, athletes, talent agencies, and manager clients. He's an alumnus of Rutgers, I hope I said that right, 2006, and New York Law School 2011, and has served clients as a talent agent, litigator, and in-house counsel for a celebrity slash influencer agency. His 13 plus years of law practice showcases countless negotiated deals, hundreds of disputes litigated and settled, and a wealth of thought leadership contributed toward the professionalization of the creator economy. Frank grew up within the 90s skate culture, immersed in skateboarding, hip hop, street art, and the local punk rock. His love and passion for the arts of all backgrounds motivates his advocacy for new frontiers of creativity. He is currently negotiating the publication of his creator economy law book, REVV, which spans his knowledge of the business and law of the creator economy, to further educate aspiring and working creators, managers, agents, coaches, lawyers, and law students alike. All right, y'all, I'm excited for you to get into this episode. Let's dive right in. And quick disclaimer, I was sick during this episode, so please, not too much on how nasally I sound. As always, you can grab the episode notes, which features a summarization of this content so that you can access it in a very easy way. You can grab that at learnwithkubi.gumroad.com. You can also connect with me at Learn with Kubi on different platforms, and Frank's information will be at the end of the episode if you want to connect with him directly as well. You can also check out his information in the episode summary. Last but not least, please make sure to rate this podcast, thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, and share it with a friend who's also on the content creator journey with you so that we can continue to reach more people and help the creator economy grow. All right, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and let's get into this episode.
We're so excited to have you here, Frank. You have such a wealth of experience, and I know that this is going to be a very powerful conversation. So,
Yeah,
before we dive into things, I just love to hear from you. Why is the creator economy such a, for lack of better words, hot topic right now?
it's hot, I think, because we have an opportunity now to kind of start fresh.
Hmm.
I think that, and one of my big, like, sort of themes is really distinguishing what we know as entertainment law and the entertainment business from the creator economy, which I think creator economy law is its own distinct practice. And I know I'll be harping on that throughout the discussion, but it gives us an opportunity to look at that not just from a legal side of things, but how we do business, the culture that we're introducing. Just as an example, I think that women have a much stronger voice in the creator economy than they did, say, in the entertainment business. And I think that that's, if you like, I tell people, if you look at my inbox, if you look at my client list, if you look at, just my interactions day to day, I deal with more powerful women, than men generally. And it's definitely a departure from in my earlier days, maybe in sort of a traditional law practice, which I've done, and based on you've heard my bio, I've kind of been around, and so even parts of the earlier entertainment business. So I have seen a shift, I've seen a change, and it's for the better. It's a community I want to be a part of because it's definitely more inclusive. It's definitely more. Like I said, an opportunity to reset, set new rules, make things more equitable, and the technology that we have today, as opposed to 100 years ago in film and TV and all of that, has allowed us to do that, and so we should take advantage of that for the better. And I think I can devote my legal skills and my profession and everything towards that kind of positivity. So I mean, hit the ground running, right? It's important to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And I like that you mentioned it's a chance to start fresh, right? Because that is really what, we're seeing is people coming up with fresh ways of working with creators, of negotiating deals, so it's
Yeah.
it's really not unknown territory, but quickly evolving territory, which I think is a great opportunity for creators and brands alike. So,
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit about in your work, what elements of the creator economy do you see working together? Like, how do creators impact brands, and how do brands impact creators? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, I most of my law practice is sort of at the inflection point between the brands and the creators in the middle. So I sign a lot of talent agencies and talent managers, and so I'm really on the team side of how do they get the creators to engage with the brands, really what I've discovered is just that creators are managing communities. They manage their following, they manage their audience, and they will introduce brands to that audience, and based on the audience reaction and their engagement and all that, that's how you know about the success of the brand and the partnership. And so my sort of inflection point is that sort of meeting whether or not there's actual fit there. So most agents and agencies, their job is to determine, is the brand a good fit for this creator? Will this work? Will this not work? Once they make that determination, then the job is to get the deal done. Let's get them to the middle. Let's get them to the negotiating table. Let's figure out what works for everybody, and and then they get the deal done. What I also have to deal with as a lawyer is that especially on the brand side, they tend to believe that sort of what they say goes, and it's my job to sort of put a lasso around that perspective and that deal and drag it towards the middle and say, no, no, creators are small business owners. They're meeting you at the table. They have terms, they have expectations, they have rights, they have all of these things. They want to provide value to you, but it has to be equitable. It has to be a situation where everyone respects each other's sort of positions, because I mean, you'll hear it from the brands. Well, we have a giant brand, our reputation, and all that stuff. And I say, well, creators do that too. If a brand acts up and they do the wrong thing, that could devastate a creator's career, could ruin their reputation. And we're seeing that more and more now, with the news coming out and executives getting in trouble, and for various reasons, and all the political climate and everything like that. I mean, it's very possible on the brand side to run afoul, and creators have to be protected in that realm too. So we're in the business now of sort of managing those equities and making sure that everybody is coming out where they should be at the end of the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is really where Rev comes into play, right? You're teaching creators and brands the terminology around how to build better partnerships. So can you touch a little bit on how that shows up for you?
Sure. So the big question is, what does Rev mean? And I'm glad you spelled it out earlier, because it's two V's. So Rev is sort of my lens in which I look at creator and brand partnership agreements. So Rev stands for rights, expectations, value, and visibility. So those are four main buckets that you can take any contract term and throw them into one of those four buckets. And if you can go through that process, by the time you get through that process, you'll pretty much have that agreement in the bag. You'll pretty much have a good handle on what's going on. Have I protected my rights? Do I understand the expectations between the two parties? Am I receiving and giving the right kind of value? And most importantly, and I feel like this is sort of the sauce here, is, do creators have visibility as to how far out the rights go in terms of usage, in terms of, am I getting paid a royalty for this thing that's going to happen down the line? What happens to my expectation to keep something confidential? Am I expected to do that for 2 years, 5 years, forever? So the visibility is very, very important. And I think that that adds to what everybody sees. Like when they open the contract, the first thing most people do is, where's the money, right? Let's go to the dollar sign. Let's make sure the dollar signs are right. And that's very important. But at the same time, and I have to tell the brands this all the time, surprisingly, that just because the dollar sign, just because that dollar is there could be so much other exposure, and you could take a $1,200 deal and turn into a $200,000 lawsuit. And so, it's not always like the price tag is matching with the potential harm or the risks that are involved. So by going through this process, and especially now educating creators to look at and have an accessible resource, to kind of up the game a little bit, to be able to have the kind of discussion, even with their internal teams, with their lawyers, their managers, like, hey, are we looking at the morality clause properly? Are we looking at exclusivity properly? Giving them that opportunity to inspire them to answer these questions, or ask these questions. It will make them just sort of approach the deals a little more conscientiously, and you won't see these issues coming up as much. So this is sort of a way of just sort of kind of rising all the ships to kind of get them to the next stop.
Absolutely. And I love how you mentioned what each bucket of rev entails, because it's important to know everything within that framework matters, especially as a creator who's trying to get more deals and trying to get fair deals.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the biggest things that show up for you in the negotiation process that creators often overlook and should be more aware of?
Sure, sure. And it's funny how it's also the little things too, right? So obviously the biggest thing in the heart of the agreement is your usage and your license. At the end of the day, you're not creating content and handing it over to the brand for them to use however they want. You should definitely set up guidelines and guardrails in terms of who's going to be using it, for how long, in what places, so that you maintain that visibility, like I said before, right? Exclusivity is a kind of a similar hand in hand idea, because if the brand is going to continue to use it for a period of time, the expectation is that you're not going to go out to another brand and have that issue. And on the flip side of that, so brands can't have unfettered use, because if you're going to go out and work with another brand, you don't want that prior content to come back to haunt you.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also the little things, right? Like there's, if you have a dispute, where are you going to go? Are you going to go to, Delaware? You're going to go to New York? You're going to go to California? Or if you're in Missouri, I mean, the interesting thing about the creator economy is that it's also 50 states and beyond, right? If you're in North Dakota, do you know if you have the same rights in North Dakota as you do in California? For example, the heart of all of this is the right of publicity, which is it's sort of a quasi property right, where you have the ability to use your name, image, and likeness
Mm-hmm.
for a commercial purpose, right, and get to leverage that, and that enables you to connect your audience to the brand, and that's what you're doing. You're using your fame to kind of get out there. And that's a law that is based in state law. So each state has different rules for that. So you have to understand wherever you are and wherever you're applying those rules. It's not like the traditional copyright or trademark law, which is all federal, where you can go to any state and it always applies the same. So we're in a world now where the creator economy is so reliant upon the right of publicity that we have to be conscientious. I mean, just today I reviewed a contract. They said we're going to have it in Delaware, and every company and every corporation loves Delaware law because it's so great to their officers and their directors and all that stuff. But the joke is that right of publicity is not recognized in Delaware. So now we have to say, oh, well, if you want to put it in Delaware and resolve all your issues there, we're going to have to supplement that and put New York law as like an extra thing for right of publicity. Otherwise, we're out
Mm-hmm.
the ability to negotiate and to argue this, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not throwing away a claim on behalf of my client because you chose that state. So it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's the little things and sometimes it's the very big things.
Yeah, no, that's really great insight. So for creators who don't know these terms, right?
Mhm.
What are some terms that stand out? Because I know you mentioned usage, you mentioned licensing, and I think those two often get confused. So can you unpack why those are
Yes.
different?
Yeah, so the way to look at it is usage is what you're allowed to do. The license is the underlying legal aspect of it. So if usage is the like sort of like the engine, the license is the fuel in some ways, because for a brand to use the content, to actively use it, I'm going to go repost, I'm going to reshare, I'm going to apply paid behind it and put it up through channels. They're actually taking the content and they're doing something with it. In fact, one of the funniest words you should get rid of in your license is to use, because use could mean anything, right? I could, bake it into a cake if I want to, right? That's use, but it makes no sense in this context. So usage is their ability to actually take action with it. The license is your whatever legal rights that you're providing. In this case, it's your right of publicity, it's your name, image, and likeness, or maybe it's your intellectual property. So let's say you took photos and video, you're going to take all of your legal rights to that and license it or provide it to the brand for a certain period of time, and you're going to put certain conditions around it. You can only put it on your social media handles. You can only do it for 30 days. If you have representatives, you can give it to them to use, but you can't just give it to anybody else that you want. And if you did, like, we'd have to track them down and figure out who's doing what. And so the license is more about sort of the legal context, and the usage is about what are the actions people are actually going to take.
Right.
So we have to be conscientious, and they kind of work hand in hand. and some people kind of clump them together and use them as the
Mhm.
same. But
Mhm.
they do have that distinction, and you should be aware of both how they're using it and all that scope and the guardrails that are involved.
Right. Yeah, I like that you put it that way because, again, people do confuse the two. And on the topic of confusing, what are some things that you see your clients confuse and that you think more light should be spread on?
I think that people glaze over revisions. I think the word revise is a very, very scary and interesting term. Um, at the top of the hour, or when we're done this podcast, if you were to say, Frank, I want the ability to edit this, that's one thing. But if you were to say, Frank, we need to do this all over again, that's a whole other story, right? We need to reshoot this. So what I usually do is in the approval process, I go in and I say, listen, we're going to allow you certain edits. And should the need to edit this, should they have gotten something so wrong that we can't edit it, then we'll agree to a reshoot. Because a reshoot of content, I know from my clients complaining and everything, it takes a long time. We got to set everything back up because of that. Editing is just so much more. There, it's malleable, right? You can kind of figure out, okay, well, we can do some text over here, or we can cut it short, and maybe we can put in a little extra thing here. It's a little bit more malleable, but for a brand to capture the right to reshoot, especially if they ask for more than one, it's very unrealistic, right? It's not, and yet a lot of people just kind of glaze right over it. They're like, yeah, sure, revision, two revisions, fine. We all know what the word revision means. I don't think they do. I think that it's a kind of a weird term.
Yeah,
Um,
no doubt.
yeah,
That is really true, right? Even
yeah,
open my eyes because I often use that terminology and I don't think like, oh, but that does include reshoots. So to
yeah,
really clarify that is so important and can save a lot of time for creators. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really true. So
Yeah, if you ever
moving
want to deal with like if you want to see how hard a creator works, make them distinguish between edit and reshoot, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, no, we work pretty hard on that."
So true. So moving towards the broader landscape of
hmm
brand deals, what do you think the creator economy is leaning towards when it comes to the size of brand deals and the type of creators that are getting these deals?
I've always looked at creators. There are different kinds, and there are sort of different categories.
Hmm.
And so it depends largely on who the brand is and what they're looking to accomplish. With celebrities, for example, celebrities I put in what we call an awareness category. So their job is really to just bring awareness to a brand, or maybe give the brand more airtime. Coke or Pepsi, right? I'd rather have whatever, one of the Jenners or whatever, do a Pepsi ad versus a Coke ad because they want Pepsi to be more at top of mind. So that's that real top of the funnel sort of conversation. You're also not really spending millions of dollars on those celebrities for conversions and sales because there are probably cheaper ways of doing that. There are, and then you get to sort of like your micro, nano, or mid tier sort of content creators based on not so much quality, but based on their ability to reach and their engagement, how tight their community are with them, who are willing to engage with them and to embrace a brand a little closer, saying, I like this wellness brand. I need to know a little bit more about that. I love to work out. This creator loves to work out. We're both at the gym. Maybe this wellness brand is going to help me. Let's learn a little bit more about that, and the creator will provide more information. And then there's the sheer bottom of the funnel sales, and those are the real. You have to be very tight with your community to the point where it's like, hey, I love this, go buy it, and then they convert. So there's that. There's also your athletes. I think that in sports, there's more of an aspirational vibe. I want to be like Mike. I want to, these guys are the superheroes. These men and women are superheroes. So you want to buy the sneakers that'll get you closer to them, or you'll drink the Gatorade that'll give you more power to run maybe a little bit faster to get closer to them. And there, and then you have a situation now where we're running into sort of the AI and digital content creator where they're really manifestations of the brand. They're just an extension of the brand. So, do they have the credibility and the authenticity of a real, live, flesh and blood influencer? No, but they would serve a different purpose. Their purpose maybe is to do 100% engagement across the board, answering every comment, every reply, every like by providing information or whatever it may be. So, they would serve almost and ideally positions that are almost impossible for a human to do.
Hmm.
And if everybody embraces those sort of categories, then brands will be able to be better served. And I think where we're heading now and sort of going into 2026 and going beyond is having marketing agencies and having people in the middle identify those categories in a conscientious way and say, you're going to need some long form or short form, and you're going to want to work with these kinds of creators versus these kinds because you're going to see a better result. You may not see a guaranteed result, but you'll see a better result if you play that game.
Yeah, no, really great breakdown. I completely agree. There are different kinds of creators, and a lot of brands, even and creators themselves, don't know how to categorize themselves. So
Yeah,
the three categories that I often say, you have your general content creators who within that bucket they have nano, micro, mid tier, mega,
yeah,
and then you have your UGC content creators, which just focus on creating content for the brand, and then
yep.
you have your influencers, which are like, the celebrities and, things of that nature. So within that, brands then decide, okay, based on our marketing objective, which type of creator do we want to work with? But what do you feel is the biggest miscommunication that appears in your work when brands come to you or creators come to you and they say, we want to start a partnership? What do you think blocks that from happening successfully?
So yeah, I mean, I think that the one thing to remember in like this, because this isn't Hollywood, right? It's not like the studios that have been around for hundreds of years. Brands come and go every day just as much as talent do. There's a constant dual cycle of entering the marketplace, discovering how this industry works. So one of the biggest assumptions that people make that I think are wrong is that brands have all the answers. They don't. Brands will there's a couple of levels, right? There's the Fortune 500s and all that stuff who will very often rely upon traditional marketing structures and procedures and things like that, which most of those things have fallen out and are not relevant anymore to the creator economy. There are a lot of brands who rely upon marketing agencies, and marketing agencies we've seen a very large concentration of power. They've been buying up smaller agencies, WPP, Publicis, all these guys. There's a major concentration of power there, which now has kind of led to, and no specific names, I think they all do it. It was a little bit less likely to negotiate with creators, whether it's for, reasonable edits to contracts or things like that. And then you have the early stage startups that they just came out of VC. They don't know anything about the marketing world at all. And as long as they find the right partners, for creator, they can do well. But that could be a minefield. You don't know what agency is just out to make a buck versus what agency actually has a really great and solid group of creators that can deliver for them. And so it's sort of that in the middle between on the agency in the agency realm, the miscommunication can come from really getting to know these brands as they come in and know what level of education that they need to develop a comprehensive plan, because brands are going to make assumptions about what they think they need, just like they do when developing a product or moving a product into another innovation. They're going to make marketing assumptions, and we need the agencies that are out there who can actually challenge the brands and say, no, you don't need this way, you need this way. And your contract terms should say this because you will attract content creators who understand their value and are not going to put up with these sort of one sided terms and things like that. So I think it's that sort of ability to push back and not assume that brands know everything.
Yeah, no, that's really great because we look at the brands and we say, yeah, they're established, they have, it all figured out. But surprisingly enough, especially some of the more established brands, they're slower to integrate the
Yep.
newer trends, and not even trends, but newer advancements. So it
Yeah.
makes complete sense. It makes
And
complete
I'll say
sense.
this to creators, those brands are so well established and all this stuff, but they don't know your audience. Your audience is your audience, right? Like you know your audience. So they can assume all they want, but at the end of the day, you're telling these brands, this is who follows me. This is what they care about. They want me posting Sunday night into, Thursday morning and all that. Like, this is how my community reacts. So
Yeah,
you can't tell me how this goes. And so it's very difficult, for brands to have to swallow the notion that they just don't know. And they
yeah,
have to be willing to learn and they have to be willing to adapt, because without that, they're going to run into more failure, and they're going to blame creators, be like, oh, these creators, they, it's just one big, smoke show and all that. And
yeah,
it's no, we know what we're talking about.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, to be taken serious, it takes time, but you
Yep.
might have to find the right brands for sure. So to the note of creators knowing their audience, when a creator comes to you, they want to receive your help. What do
Mhm.
you feel are the minimum requirements a creator needs to have in place before they seek out, legal counsel, if any?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny. I usually make the joke, and this is true for any lawyers, is when it smells like money. That's when you hire a lawyer. No, but there's some truth to that, right? The idea is that you are dealing with your rights. Even a small contract with a brand, usually there will be a contract put in front of you, or if it's a brand that says we don't need a contract, it'll be fine. Like that's another scary moment. But the way I look at it is, you're dealing with your rights. The price tag on the agreement is not always going to be the price tag of the potential exposure you're going to see. And I'll tell creators, you know, just do like it's worth the investment to just have one of your contracts reviewed. Even if let's say you have 5 deals coming up and they're not that expensive, they're a few $100 here and there. If you invest in one review, you're going to learn so much from those red lines that you could even just keep your own eye out for things coming down the good way, going, I see this morality clause and this is really weird. Like this one over here that Mike Lawyer reviewed, it makes so much more sense. Could we like change this a little bit? And you can advocate for yourself. That's worth it, to kind of go through that process. And the other thing to consider in the legal side of things now is that I belong to a network of solo attorneys throughout the US that are in the creator economy space. And I say it that way because most of your lawyers in law firms have more or less priced themselves out of the creator economy at the level of working with working creators.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those law firms are chasing the biggest brands and the biggest, Logan Pauls and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of narrow at the top, right? They're all going to be fighting for that space, but the creator economy is so vast and broad, and the money is spread so thin that it's helpful for solo practitioners to keep their costs low to meet the creators where they live and that where the money is for them. Like you can't overcharge. Like most of us don't do hourly because that would be ridiculous. We try to create like flat fees, and we encourage creators to join with management companies or agencies to their strength in numbers, so we can kind of pool the resources and pool the cost so that
Yeah.
creators can thrive and they can get their deals reviewed and protected and everything. But if you're out there by yourself and all that, I'd say invest in one review of a contract, and then you'll get a couple more deals and it'll pay for itself over time because you'll have some understanding as to what's going on. Better than nothing.
Absolutely. I think that's a great strategy. And can we talk, if you're comfortable, a little bit about the numbers? What can creators expect to pay for a review of a contract?
So the way that I approach it, and I can't speak for everyone. I do know that there are some law firms out there that are kind of like your $75 a month types. And I can't really say their names because I know them by their price tag and not what they do, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that might be a marketing flaw. But at the same time, you probably could, get with those kinds of guys. And the idea here is that once you do a bunch of these creator deals and all that, like especially like lawyers who are just in this space, we can become very very fast at it. And that's the trick is like the more deals I can kind of push out and I understand like this is how this clause is supposed to say and this is what this is supposed to say, and the brands will come back and they'll push back, but we'll know how to argue that. Then it makes us more efficient. So like you should be spending overall, your budget should be around 6% on legal. If you're like an established, constantly rolling creator with deals coming in, I'd say 6% is ideal. But like I said, most of that it kind of I don't I'd make exceptions for creators on that in that regard. Most of my deals are going to go through the management companies, so they're going to play like flat fee subscriptions, and it could be 1,000 a week, or it could be more, or it could be whatever, depending upon how many deals they generate. And all that cost kind of gets baked into a larger figure. So I could be reviewing like 20 or 30 contracts for different creators depending upon what kind of week it is, but the agency's paying the flat fee because then everyone gets the benefit. Everyone saves on cost, and it makes more sense. So you got to think in terms of bulk.
Yeah, yeah. So that's your format. You work through agencies
Yeah,
majority of the time.
yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful for creators to know. So it sounds like the creators who are really just getting started in the space, who haven't signed with an agency or, or a talent manager, they they really have to work their way up to that level to get the real, I guess, discounts and support in that way, but it also sounds like there's options for them to find more affordable services.
I mean, we can. I mean, I tell a lot of my colleagues, I say, listen, no's can become expensive. I'd rather take a few cheap yeses than make a lot of expensive no's because over time you're not making any money. So, like I said, I'm willing to meet creator. I'm willing to do percentage deals for creators. And I think what everyone has to understand is that the more deals that they do, there's a growth potential, and I'm very happy to work with creators who are in the process of growing. But if they don't have deals, there's nothing to review, right?
Mhm.
So ideally, and I know of some established creators who have they dropped their management company, they dropped their agency, and they're doing all inbounds, and they hired a virtual assistant and me. And it works for them. They're like, it's an ongoing budget, it's an ongoing concern. And so I think if you're an aspiring creator and you kind of want to get out there, realize that you're starting a business and that you want to start generating enough revenue per month by doing so many deals. And you're going to bake in that cost of the legal cost. And I think 6% is reasonable. For that. And if, like I said before, if let's say you have 5 total deals that'll span over the next few months, if you invest in one contract review, a couple $100, it's worth it because you're going to be able to see and get that insight for all those other deals about what to expect, how to approach it. You'll also have sort of a lawyer on standby in some ways if things go weird. They'll have already established a relationship with you. There's confidentiality. Most of us are required to keep what's called an IOLA or an IOLTA, which is a trust account for client for like our client funds. So you
Mhm.
could easily have brands pay the IOLTA and then have it stay there as sort of like an escrow in
Mhm.
instances where you want to be more secure with payments and things like that. You can have us resolve issues. Plus, one of my favorite fringe benefits to having a lawyer is you get to blame us. If something's going weird with the brand, be like, listen, my lawyer's telling me not to, that we need to put this in writing or do something. It's not your fault anymore. You're blaming the lawyer. It's like, nope, legal's just being weird, and I don't know why, but you got to talk to them. And I love being to blame. It's great.
I think there's so much to be said here in the space of creators just understanding that there is roles that serve them as they expand their career and
Yeah,
not taking on everything by themselves, because even
yeah,
if you are equipped with knowledge of what to look out for and who to go to, um, being willing to actually take that first step and invest in yourself, because it is an investment to work with the lawyer,
yeah,
to seek out counsel, right?
yeah.
But it serves you in the long term in your career. So for you, your practice is really rooted in expanding the creator economy from the lens of creators. And so, what's something that you want to see more of in relation to the creator economy that you aren't feeling like is being paid attention to currently?
So I think there's different hands in that. The first is obviously strength in numbers. I think that more creators do need to sort of band together. I think that there might be some emphasis in certain circles about a lot of competition. But I tell people all the time, I said, unlike theater, you can have multiple Hamlets on stage with a brand, right? You can have a bunch of rock stars doing their thing, and that only benefits the brand, and they'll keep spending. So if more creators support each other as opposed to take each other down, and I think that's the macro level too. I think that I represent a couple of different companies where they're trying to push more representation of different cultures, ethnicities, backgrounds, and these are whole markets and whole cultures that don't always fit in the mold of sort of certain brands' sort of perception of what marketing should be and how it should interact. And for me as the lawyer, I mean, it's all the law to me. I mean, you give me a contract and, I treat everybody like this is how the contract has to be. I'm curious to see how different cultures approach the business and how they want to interact with it. That would only make me more excited to understand that. And it's a change from my day to day, right? So having more, opening up more markets, opening up more diversity, opening up more capability, it also just creates a better informed community.
Mhm.
And it would be exciting. So not to say that I'm bored, but it's interesting to see new challenges, and I think that there is just a need for investment in getting to understand that and being able to represent more people across the globe, across the area, and open the tent up even more.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you putting a spotlight on that because that is a big issue. I think across the board, not just within the creator economy, but across the board within uh,
Sure,
most
sure.
economies. So, for creators who really just want a crash course on here's what I need to know, here's how I get started, what advice would you give them?
Wait for the book. um, yeah, I mean, I try now. At the moment, like I do a lot of things on LinkedIn, so I think engaging with professionals on LinkedIn. Every Sunday, I post a thing about what's happening, like an article that happened in the creator economy from the week before. But it's about like looking to thought leaders and looking to people who are willing to kind of engage and discuss the creator economy from the professional level. There's a lot of not just on the legal side, but there's also people coming up now in the financial literacy side, knowing your numbers, understanding what you should and shouldn't do with your finances, long term, short term, investment, all that kind of stuff. You should be looking for resources, especially online, that where even the tease of it is free and it can give you some awareness as to some of the things you should be thinking about. But over time, as your business develops and grows and evolves, you'll get into the more specific details of that, and you'll be able to see, oh gosh, my accountant, I need an accountant, and I've got a lot of income coming in, so I got to sort out my taxes and I got to get all that sorted. I'm not just getting gifts, and I got to sort out what that looks like, and
Mhm.
so as you grow, you're going to want to engage in those kind of business professional type of conversations. I think LinkedIn's a good place to start. God willing, my book will hopefully do a lot. But there are other writers out there who have put out books on other things like how to pitch, um, how to kind of run sort of your own production and that kind of thing, and definitely self small business accounting and things like that. Definitely be in search of resources to build your business because you should be treating it like a business. If it's just a hobby, you got a day job and you just like doing videos every Thursday night, cool. That's your thing. I'm not pushing you into a career, but I'm saying that if you are ready to take those steps, the resources are out here so far, and even just having the conversations, it's helpful.
Absolutely, yes. LinkedIn is a great tool for that. There definitely needs to be on the lookout for Rev. I'm going to be on the lookout for Rev.
I'll let you know. It
Yes.
won't be a secret. I promise you.
Any last words that you want to give to folks who have tuned in today?
Um, I mean, thanks for tuning in. I am, like I said, I'm very loud on LinkedIn, and I definitely love to engage with folks. I love to have conversations about people's perspectives about the industry. I tend to tell people, like, look, I'm in my early 40s, and I know that the creator economy sort of it skews a little younger, and I feel like a guest in sort of in the industry, right? I feel like I'm here to provide a service. I'm here to, but at the same time, I really do feel like it's a part of me as well. So I have such a passion for it that I love having that conversation, and I'd love to hear other people's perspectives, and I love supporting people's channels, creators. I follow. If you see my Instagram, I follow way too many people. But at the same time, I just it's my way of supporting in some ways. And yeah, so I think engage. I mean, this is what we all do. So don't be afraid to engage and get out there and learn more.
Yeah, so people can find you on LinkedIn, connect with you on LinkedIn,
Yeah,
and
especially.
yes, and definitely look into Poe Law if you're looking for some legal support as well.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Frank. I'm so happy that we had you on the episode today. It's been
Thank
an
you. I had such
amazing
a great time.
it's been an amazing time hearing from you. And for those of you who have listened or watched, make sure that you check out Frank, reach out to Frank if you have questions. And if you have questions about Learn with Kubi, you know where to find me. I will see you all in the next episode. Make sure to look out for the episode notes so that you can get a concise summary of today's session. And if you are looking for additional resources, I will be sure to link them in the episode notes as well. All right, y'all. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next one.